Good evening, everybody. I see 7 attendees here, but I think we are looking for a whole total of about 19 startups to join. So let's give another minute or so, and then we will start the call. Okay. Actually, it is 6:05. So should we start? I see 7 attendees, but
yeah, let's start.
Yeah. Good evening and welcome to all of you. Firstly, my congratulations to all the startups who are shortlisted for these problem statements. This is the 5th and the last workshop in this series of 5 workshops that we're organizing for the shortlisted startups for all the problem statements. So we started this on Monday with network digitization and route rationalization problem statements, and followed by on Tuesday we talked about bus maintenance scheduling and bus and crew scheduling topics. Then earlier yesterday we were discussing what is that? The transit performance monitoring, and followed by, and today morning we were talking about, earlier this evening we were talking about the IPT problem, and then now the last 2 problem statements that are the passenger information system and grievance redressal. So these are grievance management. So these are the things that we'll discuss today. Some of you have attended the previous sessions, so the initial discussion and presentation on the expectations from the startups and the timelines will probably be a repetition for you. It is the 5th time that I'm hearing, so I can understand. But bear with that for the next 5 minutes. And for the people who are attending this for the first time, please make a note of the timelines. And then we will quickly go to our speakers. I'll do the introduction of the speakers at that point in time. So right now, let me hand it over. If you are not aware, just in case, the initiative Transport for All is being led by Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and with the prime partner being ITDP, and supported by World Bank, Startup India, 6 platform, City Innovation Exchange, and ASRTU, which is the Association of State Road Transport Corporations. So with that, let me invite Sanjay. Are you ready to show us the next steps?
Yes. I'll go ahead with the presentation.
Yeah, perfect.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, now go ahead.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. Congratulations on making it to this phase 2. As Prashant briefed earlier, Transport for All is an innovative challenge initiated by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. It aims to enhance the mobility experience of citizens. The challenge focuses on digital innovation, invites cities, citizens, and innovators to join hands to develop contextual digital solutions to improve formal as well as informal public transport to better serve the mobility needs of all the citizens. We have traversed through the stage 1, and we are in stage 2. More than 130 cities signed up for stage 1 of the challenge, launched on 15th April 2021. 100 cities formed the Transport for All task force with key stakeholders from government and government working in the transport sector, along with academic institutes, non-profit organizations, and IPT unions. The city successfully conducted surveys with more than 2 lakh citizens, 15,000 bus drivers, conductors, and 22,000 informal bus transport, making it the biggest public transport data exercise in the country. The 46 cities which have qualified for the stage 2 of the challenge used the survey's findings to develop more than 165 problem statements, which were now curated into a final list of 8 problem statements by the challenge team. The 8 problem statements are listed in the next slide. These are the 46 champion cities qualifying amongst the stage 2 cities. So these are the 8 curated problem statements. I'll quickly run over through the timelines as well. And again, congratulations to the startups which have made to the stage 2. So yes, as part of stage 2, by 20th April, you'll be needing to submit the guidance document for the solution. By 31st of July, the startups will develop solutions with the cities. States adopt startup procurement policy, and we'll start working offline. By the Independence Day, the startups will present the solution, beta testings and results, and implementation plan for evaluation to the jury of experts. By the end of August, the announcement of the 16 winning startups or solutions for offline workshop will be announced. The most awarded part of the challenge, the reward dispersal, happens in 4 stages. 40% at the end of the month of August, 40% at the end of the month of September after finalizing the pilot solution procurement with the city, 10% after submitting the pilot project results, 10% later during the announcement of the stage 3 winners. So the stage 3 follows as by the end of 30th September, the cities will procure the solutions. By 15th November, the cities start piloting the solutions. By the end of the November, startups present the pilot to the jury again. By 15th December, the announcement of the successful startup solutions will be showcased by Mahua on City Innovation Exchange platform to enable cities to procure the products or services. Once again, welcome you all, and this is the brief timeline of all these 3 stages mentioned here for your reference. Over to you, Prashant. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay, for that timelines, and that will be shared with all of you over emails also probably. So don't worry if you remember. Basically, you have time the next 4 months by which you will be developing a kind of a prototype or even an MVP, depending upon where you are, and then use actual data to do a proof of concept, and then basically go to a pilot stage later. And that is what will be evaluated at the end of stage 2, and you will get the selected startups will get the awards. So with that, let me now introduce the panelists and the speakers here. First, we have Andrew Salzberg. Andrew, you there? Can we see you on screen? Yes. Yes. So Andrew is the former head of transportation policy and research at Uber. And then he also is a partner. Is that ex-partner or current partner of Transit? So he's part of Transit, which is a mobile application. I'm sure he is going to talk about it in his presentation. And he is extremely well versed with the mobility segment across the world. So you can see the amount of landscapes in which they are spread, and then I'm sure that will be a big motivation for each of you to learn and aspire to reach. So the other speaker we have here is Sukhbir Singh. He is part of a National Institute of Urban Design, which is hosted and housed in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. He is here with us. He works extensively with various startups, governments, and various other agencies in terms of policy and supporting startups as well, innovation. So Sukhbir is going to talk about the grievance redressal, grievance management problem statement. So with that very brief introduction, I will now pass it on to Andrew. Andrew, if you would want to speak, or even share your presentation if you have one.
Sure, okay. Great. Okay. How does that look? Loading, there we go. Okay. Okay, so thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. It's been great to be involved in this project from afar and kind of cheering you guys on from the sidelines. And hopefully I can provide some value. I'll try and keep things short. Basically, as Prashant mentioned, I have some background in a couple of mobile apps that have been playing important roles in transportation in different ways around the world. So I worked for many years at Uber, and I did a few things there. As Prashant mentioned, I worked on the policy team, but I kind of worked at the intersection of products that were in urban mobility and government and public policy. And so I'm not a software engineer, so I didn't build the app from the ground up. And obviously there were, by the end, thousands of people who were working on it. So it became a pretty big enterprise. So I saw it from the outside. I can provide some feedback on the kinds of things that were successful there. But I helped us to acquire a bike share company and was kind of part of the first 2 or 3 people who conceived what it meant for Uber to do things like public transportation directions and ticketing, and also kind of helped to build some products to share data back to cities. That's just some background on me. And then, as Prashant mentioned, I'm going to talk more about a company called Transit App, where I worked, and which, if you're not familiar with, I think is an interesting model and precedent a little bit for the kinds of problems that are being described, specifically in the problem statement we're working on. So Transit is essentially, I'll talk about the detailed features, but really it does all the things that you would think about essentially as part of this problem. So real-time information for public transport, fixed route, but also incorporating things like bike share and on-demand transport as well, and getting deeper into ticketing. So in different parts of the world, it really does do all the pieces that we're thinking about in ways that are suited to its market. We can talk about the differences of where transit operates and where we're talking about in this challenge. So, I think the problem statement, as we've talked about it, is just the headline, create a mobile web platform for multimodal journey planning, real-time transit information, and integrated ticketing, right? That's the problem statement that's been sent out. And it's relatively easy to write and say, but I think the actual details of how you can do this successfully end up being quite complicated quite quickly. So I thought I would share a couple of examples of what I've seen that has actually worked in some cases, and maybe in some other cases not worked. So, the details of the problem statement, hopefully you have these and you've seen them, and you obviously responded to them when you wrote your application and the different documents you've submitted so far. So I won't go into them kind of step by step. I'm going to give a little bit more on kind of higher level, 2 big things that I think have been important to success of apps where they've been successful. So I'll try to talk about basically 2 things in the time that I have in some level of detail. So just to zoom out, this idea, the problem statement that we just described around multimodal journey planning, real-time information, and ticketing, it's all bundled up, at least in many places, under this concept of mobility as a service. It's become, I would say, a bit of a buzzword over the last 8-9 years in different places, so much so that it has its own clip art. This picture, if you Google Moss, you kind of get this picture. It's a bit of a cheesy image, I would say, that shows up in a lot of places. It's become kind of a stock idea that people have talked about as one of the things that might help compete with the rise of the personal car, right? That's my background also is in urban planning, sustainability. And so my motivation for this, as I think is shared with many of the cities, is finding ways that things that are not your own car can be even more compelling to use and more convenient than a personal car. So this vision, I think, at a high level that is, aligned with the problem statement we have has been something people have talked about as, some kind of a holy grail is a really great thing. If it only existed, so many people would use it. And I think what I've seen and want to talk about is some examples of how that's gone in the past. So to give you one prominent example of a city that had the same essential mission as what we're talking about in this problem statement is Los Angeles. So in 2016, Los Angeles wanted to create something called the Go LA app, which really had a list of requirements that was not so dissimilar from what you're talking about. And they commissioned a third-party developer to build it. That was Conduent, and they built it. And so this is a screenshot of it in 2016. It does have taxis and Lyft and bikes, etc. And you can do trip planning on the side. And so it met all the requirements that the city of LA had for it. And I'll just give you an update on where that app is. Oh, if you go to golaapp.com, there's nothing there. And actually, if you went there, this is 2023. I took a screenshot, but you can go back many years. I think the app was pretty brief in its existence. And the reality was that people didn't use it. So it met all the requirements that people had for it in terms of showing everybody all the modes of transport and giving them options. But in practice, it wasn't very useful. And people in LA decided on their own that either they had what they needed from other apps or they didn't need an app at all, or whatever the reason was. The app that was built on commission from the city Department of Transportation just didn't meet the needs of users. And as a result, ultimately, the money that was invested in it didn't end up going anywhere. So I use that as a cautionary tale of LA is one, but not the only one, I assure you, of other cities, certainly in Europe and North America that I'm familiar with, that have commissioned this kind of public-facing consumer app that combines many modes into one that have not succeeded. And so I want to give you kind of one idea from my own life of why that is. And I'm stealing this from a clever online post that someone made. But I want to kind of compare mobile apps for transportation to baby clothes. And so I happen to be in the midst of having a couple of small children. One of them is crying in the background, you might hear. And there are really two very distinct kinds of baby clothes. There's the kind that someone buys for you that's designed to look very nice and have you take a picture in it so you can send them back that you put the clothes in the baby that they gave to you. And it's got all these very complicated snaps that you can see in this picture. And it takes 3 parents to try and hold a screaming baby down and put them into this, one outfit for the brief time they wear. So that's one kind of baby outfit that really is made to suit the needs of the person buying the outfit for the parent, but not really terribly useful for the baby or the parent in practice. And another kind of baby outfit is the one that has magnetic swipes that you can literally just do with one hand while you're holding something else as a parent, and it takes 5 seconds to get your baby ready. And I bring up these two examples because they're very different examples of product design, right? The product on the left is built for some specifications for the person buying the piece of clothing, but not for the person actually using it. And the one on the right is built for the actual user of this device. So this is clothes that are actually built for the parents and the babies in question. And I use this as an example because I think this one on the left is a reasonable description of kind of how the Go LA app was built, right? It was built to look nice for the person buying the software, but not really that useful for the actual person who was supposed to use it. Whereas this magnetic swipe, I think, is what you want to aim for in mobility apps. And I'll give you an example of how I think Transit app does a better job of being a little bit more like the baby outfit on the right than the one on the left. So just to zoom out and give you a couple of shots of what Transit actually is, and then I'll talk to you a bit about how it's built and how it got to where it is. So, one of the main things you see, and this is a screenshot on the right of the Transit, if you open it, in this case in Denver, but wherever you open it, you see something similar. There is a ton of information inside this app. Like I mentioned, it has buses, trains, bike share, ride hail, car share, scooters. But what you actually see when you open it is only a very small sample of that, right? They've chosen to show you the real-time arrival information of a few nearby bus routes, but they could have shown you 1,000 different things. They have a few places at the bottom here where you can buy a ticket. That's what that label is there, where they happen to have tickets available in this market. They have a little icon of a home, and you can press that if you've already preset your destination to get home. So ultimately, there's a pretty small volume of information that is shown here in a very clear way. It doesn't mean that this is the only way that it has to be done. I think my point is just that some really careful design decisions went into making sure the most useful things for people who wanted to actually use the service were most present when you open the app, right? It's not showing you everything. It's not just a full list of every option you might take. It's really carefully curating what might be useful to the user. And they've made some choices that, again, are right for their users and might be quite different in the context you're working in. But the point is that it's not really just a hodgepodge. It's a pretty carefully curated set of things that are presented here. And just to give you a sense of what Transit can do, as you would expect, it can find real-time information for your next bus arrival and plot it, and you can watch it while you're waiting for it. In addition to that, you can kind of compare different options to get from A to B if you enter a destination. You can see different modes of transportation. You can find the nearest scooter, bike share service, no matter what company it is, assuming they have data feeds that we'll talk about next. And also you can start to combine modes of travel. So you can say, I want to get from here to there, and maybe I can take a bike to a subway or an Uber to a subway. So this is all possible within the app as it stands today. And in addition, I think one of the more complicated things, and this is only in a subset of markets, and I know this is in the challenge brief, is that you can actually buy a ticket. But again, that ticketing possibility is only possible because of ticketing partners here at the bottom. And we could talk a bit more about that. Because I think the main point for me is that, yes, I think these features are the kind of things that are being talked about here. They're being used by more than 1 million people daily, I think, in the last numbers that I checked, in many markets around the world. But I think the key is that there's lots of design decisions being made about what is being displayed to users, and that's being tested regularly to make sure it's actually adding value to people who are opening the app. But so that's one. I think the focus on the users is kind of one thing I want to get through. And I think the transit experience, which really has taken a strong point of view on what they should show in their app when, is one way to think about that. And as a result, I would say, transit has grown. This is a slightly outdated slide, but it's in many, many markets, primarily North America. You'll notice, obviously, not in India and in a few markets around the world, but it's pretty heavily concentrated in North America where I am. Okay, but the other thing that I want to talk about, and I know Prashant mentioned that there was an earlier workshop on the problem statement about digitizing transit networks, but the reality is that transit would in no way have been able to build any of this if it wasn't for the actions that were taken primarily by public agencies, and more specifically by transit agencies. Not only them, that's kind of been the foundation for how this has worked, and it's built on open ecosystems and specifically on open data and standardized open data. And I know this is not always present everywhere, but I think it's worth thinking about. Yes, you can see the glossy user-facing, consumer app that like transit or frankly Uber in some cases, but the reality is those things are only possible because of some of the work that's going on behind the scenes by other agencies and partners that make it possible. And so just to, I think hopefully if you're on this call and you've got this far, you don't need me to explain the basics of data standards, but obviously, the reason that I mentioned that transit is able to show things like, the nearest bird scooter or the nearest bike share is because there is a standardized data feed that comes from the bike and scooter companies that ultimately through transit or any other app is able to be shown to consumers. And in that case, the data standard is called GBFS. And you can always look these up. All these data standards are open and public. They're always being worked on and updated. And they help to make, in the simplified, standardized way that you can get information about these systems to consumers to be useful. And they are regularly being updated and they're worked on collaboratively by companies around the world. So just to give you some background on this, and you may already know this, I won't take too much time, but this is really all started with something called GTFS. Hopefully you all know about it, but it's the data standard that has powered how data transit agencies share their information both on schedule and real time with other apps. Originally it was Google, that's what the G originally stood for, but now it's all kinds of companies, notably transit. And that's now the case, again, to take an example from North America, that virtually every large agency and almost every agency of any size in North America has at least a static GTFS feed, and most have a real-time information feed coming through GTFS2. And that may seem very simple now, but it was really controversial even a little more than 10 years ago, where in the old days, the New York City Transit Authority would sue app developers who wanted to get access to this information. So people would try and manually download schedules and make their own apps. And if they did so, the MTA would chase after them legally to stop that. And that has really turned on its head, obviously. Now, not only is that not happening, but there's a whole lot of effort that goes into maintaining high quality public data feeds that allow apps like transit to exist. And so, the reality is that GTFS started many, many years ago. All the way back in 2005 was the original version. It's expanded since then. Real time has been added. There's a whole bunch of new additions and modifications of what GTFS is, but it's sort of like the grandfather of mobility data standards, and that it's been around for more than 15 years. And obviously, I mentioned GBFS for bike share and scooters. It's also been adapted for car share services in some cases. That's already getting a little bit long in the tooth, as we say, a little older. 8 years old since it originally started. Again, most North American cities at least require that kind of feed for scooter and bike share services. It gets more complicated in some of the places that you've been asked to look at, whether it's, taxis or informal transit, on-demand services in general. There's been some work under something called GOFS, which we can happily share in the comment thread, which is a less fully developed standard, but it's trying to do some of what GBFS and GTFS did. And ultimately in payments, there is no such thing as a data standard. But as I mentioned earlier, the way that companies like transit have been able to do payment at scale, i.e. in more than one market, has been through open APIs from some of the companies that do work in this space. So whether it's Token Transit or Wasabi, there are places that have been able to, share an API that's easy to integrate into third-party apps like Transit. And sometimes they've been doing that because the public agencies they work for, who they are contracted by, have asked them to make APIs easily available to people like Transit. So the point here for me is that, really what's allowed Transit to build scalable products that work is that they don't have to reinvent their process every time they go to a new market, that there are standardized ways that the data is shared that allows them to really focus on user interface, consumer experience. So it can help lower the costs for apps like the ones that you're hoping to build or that you've already built or that other companies have built around the world. So I know this is not necessarily a challenge about what public agencies have to do, but I would say I don't want to give the impression that it's easy to build very compelling apps for consumers that are usable and functional without having the data you need to actually do that. And if you're interested in kind of the advice we have for public agencies, if you're on this call or you want to share with somebody, I worked a lot on a guide to open mobility as a service, meaning that lots of apps can use it, that it's competitive, there's not one endpoint, and there's a lot of information on this website down at the bottom of the page. And so really, I said I want to try and show two things. So one is that I think you have to stay focused on your users. And here I mean primarily the real actual users on the street who are using public transportation or other modes to get around. I think if you can build something that adds value for them, you will have users and you can develop a product. In the long run, potentially on the back of that, you can find ways to share data back with other partners. You can, build new features, et cetera. But if you don't really start from the premise that your app or whatever you're building has to be useful for people on the street, I don't think you're going to get anywhere. You might end up like Go LA, where you check a lot of boxes for meeting all the requirements, but no one uses the app and it ends up kind of on the scrap heap, unfortunately. And then I think as part of your work, I think it is important to try and keep the conversation going about open and standardized data. When you're starting out, it depends on the position you're in with the partner that you're working on. But I think this really, to me, is kind of really key underpinning for where I've seen success in the space that we're talking about. So those are my two lessons that I've learned, and I'm happy to talk more about that in the Q&A or beyond. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Absolutely wonderful, Andrew. I think that's a much needed input for anybody who is trying to, face large number of users of different types and different backgrounds and ages. So I think keeping it simple is, that's a key message. And of course, the data requirements and all those things. That's using certain standards, open standards, and then keeping the data in those formats is always helpful. So thanks very much for that. We'll take the questions a little later once we finish Sukhbir speaking. So let me now invite Sukhbir to speak about what our expectations are from the grievance management challenge. Sukhbir, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Prashant, for introducing, and thank you, Andrew, for that power pack presentation. I was thinking, as a policy guy, I will be giving more into the insight into the functionings of ULBs, who will be the eventual users of the system, and going to speak about more of the behavioral particularities of the decision making that happens within the ULBs. So I felt that I may have limited insights to offer into the technology stack of these solutions, but I will try to make a spirited effort. So I'll just share the screen on the problem statement and basically talk more from the user perspective side of what cities will be expecting and what are the kind of demands that will be placed on the system. Just bear with me as I try to share the screen.
If you want, I could have it open from a different. Okay, yeah, I see it now. Yeah, it is there. It is there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So while I go into the problem statement on grievous redressal, I'd like to offer some insight of how typically urban local bodies have approached grievance redressal systems and Although in this context, the state transport undertakings will also have a significant role, and there might be the eventual consumers of this solution will also be the undertakings. But broadly, if we look at the history of grievance redressal in public systems, technology has really changed the amount of user input and friction that was there in the process earlier, from paper complaints and applications to actually sending digital emails to public agencies to resolve long-standing issues. And then to IVR, and finally, I think the most advanced frontier that we're seeing is WhatsApp chatbot-based interactions. So that's how we've seen grievance redressal evolve around urban systems, and what it's done is that the expectation of citizens when it comes to grievance redressal has really changed. And while we were saying that this is a mobile web-based portal, we really need to see the context of the technology that is already in play and the kind of expectations that those users will place on this system. And why is this important from the urban local body side or the transport undertaking side? Essentially, one big internal reason that I can say is that often there are competing demands for public transport across the geographical spread of the city, and to optimize for that demand, there isn't enough data, so to speak, and it's mostly dependent on ticket sales. So this will provide them an additional data point to navigate or mediate between the transport demands and the service levels that are offered across the different areas of the city. And on as you would be able to look at the problem statement already, you would have seen while you would have applied for this, that this satisfaction also depends on how their complaints are addressed currently in the system, and the overall service level satisfaction. So it's that come with that, I would go into the components of the app, so to speak. So essentially from the end user, which is in this case the citizen, the requirement would also be of what is the kind of feedback or feedback beyond the redressal, but also in the interim, what is the kind of movement that they're seeing in the redressal system, at what stage of resolution is their complaint. So just to take a big picture view of what the overall system architecture could look like, I would say there would be 5 core components. Consolidation, wherein the data is ingested. Now, I'm not restricting that to voice-based portals here, while the problem statement does speak about it, but I'm sure that given the participation level that we're seeing in the Transport for All challenge, there would be advancements that could ingest different data types and consolidate in the app. So the first component would be, of course, consolidation. The second would be dissemination. So within the system, this would be a multiple sign-on and a prioritization system, which could assign the complaint to the right stakeholder within the authority which was looking at the solution. So based on that, the prioritizing rules, so within the rules engine, and I'll speak about it when I go deeper into the app, the possible architecture of the app. And of course, so the monitoring of the complaint redressal, while the actions might be taken on a physical level, on the field level at the site, there would need to be a traceability built in into the app when it comes to the implementation. And on the user side, the next component that would be important would be the feedback system. I would say the feedback system would be a limited view, but this feedback system, based on the modern systems we're seeing, a status or tracking system for the complaints at what level of redressal or resolution is there. And this becomes important when we try to integrate more features around safety and security, safety of women users. So an SOS protocol. So if that is getting implemented, then the rules engine should be designed and provide for that. And finally, then for the senior leadership or the management of the authorities, what is the kind of analytics dashboard or system that is available? So speaking of the profile of end users, now I would say public transport is used across age groups, across economic groups, and across very diverse regional spreads of the city. And one area to highlight this is that the kind of technology stacks that we're seeing. So voice-based AI systems are still probably strong in Hindi or English. But given that the kind of deployment landscape we're looking at for this solution, it would be good if this could integrate multiple languages, because especially in the big cities, say Delhi and Bangalore, you would have to account for the differentiation in dialects and the linguistic peculiarities of the different users. If you're going for a voice-based system, and of course, based on WhatsApp chatbots also. So I think that is one critical point to note here, that the linguistic standardization that can be carried out while you're building the rules engine or whatever the analytical stack is for the app, and the operators of the system. So for at the field level, you would have to take into account network availability, device capabilities, because these would be primarily and on the field staff. This will be deployed with the bus conductors or the drivers, or say the emergency response vehicles. And the application should be scalable or in terms of the demands it places on the devices of the field staff. So that's a bit about the field staff that probably a good solution would look at. Now, going into the solution requirements, these are deliberately kept broad enough to account for the innovation that US participants might bring in. But if I were to elaborate more on this, I would say when we say a simple and easy registration system, so it should be multi-channel. It should while we are we're looking for voice-based systems, because that's the most easiest and does not require building of complicated systems. But when we're looking at the registration system, it should be multi-channel, and it should provide for acknowledgement, verification, and tracking of closure and feedback. In terms of the authorities, it should provide features on the understanding the network segmentation. So what part of the transport system, say if a city is also integrating a metro system into it, or a BRTS, or just plain old buses, and in some scenarios, three-wheelers. If anyone's been to Delhi, there's also those electric rickshaws that are integrated into the system. So at what level of network segmentation are the authorities looking at integrating? And then especially GIS based layers to integrate the vehicle tracking systems into the platform. And then more on the rules engine or the business rules side of it, they would be assigning it to different departments, or even at the vertical level of authority. So the rules engine should allow for that, and based on the sign-on rules, provide for different views and escalation and reallocation of the complaints. And of course, the data lake should record all of this in terms of the data set. This would entail Yeah, so I feel like I should move along with this faster. So as that we can allow for more time for questions. Lastly, I would say that two critical bits that we are seeing, since a good number of cities in the challenge are smart cities. There are standards that have been published for the integrated command and control systems in these cities. And these are very detailed standards. You will find all the, to your satisfaction, a lot of technical details. So and even cities that are not smart cities have a e-governance backbone that will be more or less similar to these command centers. So the solutions should look at integrating these systems. So they already have dashboards that monitor the vehicle tracking systems of the waste fleet or the bus fleet when you look at mature cities. So that should be accounted for. And the second bit is that mapping the business process of the urban local body or the transport undertaking. So the application should be scalable enough for when more the solution moves across one or two cities. So the app module should be able to adjust or scale for the different authority structures that might be there from city to city. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and come open the floor to Q&A. Over to you, Prashant, and I hope I was brief in my intervention. Yeah.
Yeah, I had my mic on mute. Thank you very much, Sukhbir. I think to run through the problem statement itself, I think it is valuable because there is text, but the understanding of what is expected and the complexity of it may or may not be understood. So that's good that you went through that. Now let me open the floor for questions. If you have any, there are one or two which were already answered in the chat box, but Rajesh, I didn't follow your question. Is that a follow-up for your previous one, or?
I think it's a follow-up from a previous question. Yeah.
Okay, right.
It was about the questions around Google Maps and sort of how to think about working with them. And I guess
right.
Yeah, I mean, my sense from the question of Prashant, you may have a view from the way the problem statement is framed, is that cities, I think there was 20 cities in the long list that had highlighted this kind of problem as the problem around passenger information as a challenge. So I think we have a list of requirements for how you might think about building a solution. I think understanding what's already out there and what, if anything, cities that are requesting this are looking for that's not present there, to me, is an important part of refining.
So, I think this is the most important as well as tricky question because Google Maps already has whatever needs to be there probably, but I think the cities find it a challenge in terms of creating and maintaining the input data. So that is one of the challenges, part of this, in the network digitization, which is also one of the challenge in part of the T4A. So we have that in place. But at the same time, from the passenger information perspective, there is a whole lot of things, right? So network digitization will only do to the extent of digitizing their transit networks and schedules. But there is a whole portion of integrating with their ticketing systems, which may or may not be standardized, which may or may not be open protocols or whatever that is. So that engagement with the city to get their ticketing systems integrated, and then various other modes to be integrated into this app. That is probably the requirement of these cities. Some of them do not have a full understanding of the GTFS itself. So I think there will be some level of support and assistance that you will have to kind of provide in creating that understanding and making sure that the schedules and the timetables and all those things are up to date, and then provide some kind of a back-end mechanism to even allocate buses to their schedules and that kind of stuff. So all those things may or may not be available with them. So these are all the broad perspectives from the passenger information system. So as Andrew also mentioned earlier, then having the data in an open system format is probably the biggest challenge that you will face as you deal with cities. But I think together we can overcome that over this period. Rajesh, you had one more. You have your hand raised.
Yeah. So thanks. This question was answered. Thanks, Andrew, for answering that. Actually, we are working on open maps as well for GTF this feed. My question was more to Sukhbir. So Sukhbir, for what we have seen from our experience of running the solution in a small way that we do, also capturing the customer feedback, as you said, through various means becomes a kind of a challenge for us. One aspect is the voice system. Basically, as a small organization, we will not be able to have 24/7 or the time till the buses are running. And secondly, as you mentioned, there are language challenges as well. So could you throw some light on how do we, in the first place, get constructive feedback? And secondly, once we implement that constructive feedback, how do we go back to the customer and tell them, look, you raised this concern and now we have overcome it. So is it to your satisfaction? And then again, get a repeat feedback, something of that on those lines, if you could throw some light on.
Sure, Rajesh. So I think it's a good question in that it really helps me. It helps throw light on on what can be solved through technology and what needs to be actually looked into the human side of it. So I think there are two ways to look at it. One is, of course, the marketing or the outreach aspect to it. That how are you going to position the grievance redressal system within the system? Is it going to be QR code based, or is it going to sit in an app that what are the strategies to actually position the grievance mechanism to users, whether it integrates into the already functional city app, because that they might also be there, or is it a standalone web app that activates when you scan a QR, or there are some other strategy that you want to implement. So I think it wouldn't be fair for me to comment on what is the kind of strategy you apply in that case. And then I think the second way of looking at it is what is the technology stack that you are implementing, and that ties in to the first bit of actually reaching the users who want to register their grievance complaint. So I think that the systems would not in the sense that of course the action side of it, or the remedial side of it, those assignments would be happening on the city side for a limited period of time, and the transport system would not be running 24/7. So I think when the web app is built and it's I don't know if it's hosted on the premises of the city, or is it sitting in the cloud, based on whatever the city's requirements are. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I would again see it as an extension of the reach you're doing, and of course in terms of the transactions or the user rate of city officials actually moving through the app, or the throughput. I don't think that should be a very high number. So I don't think that at least that should be a challenge for scalability. The design of it, of course, would require study of the decision-making system in the ULB. But beyond that, I don't think there should be a very big challenge in designing the app.
Yeah, so there are a couple of requirements. If I may add to what you answered, there are two, three things here, Rajesh. So one is that we are not expecting you to run the show, right? We are expecting you to, as a startup, to provide the solution, and then the city would run the show. Like let's say, if somebody has to manage the voice response system, so the people will be from the city. I don't think the city is expecting you to put people there. Okay, point number one. Then it is just voice is not the only means, but various other web means where people can just type in their questions and all those things. That's the other part. On the third side, your role will be mainly to provide the analytics and routing and tracking of all these problems, and not really be there on the ground per se, or even actually resolve the problem per se. So that is all the role of the city. When it comes to the other thing that Subir was saying is this, in most likely cases, this is an integration to their existing systems, right? So if there is a passenger information system, so most passenger information systems already have some kind of a mechanism to record or get customer feedback. Now, but they may not have this entire system of tracking the complaint and managing the complaint through the government agencies' channels. So that's the part where your solution comes into play. So you might actually, and the requirements always already state that it has to be integrated into other solutions, or it could sometimes be a standalone solution. So kind of a long answer, but I think that's what it is. Then I have a question. I had one question from Arun, but I think I don't see the hand raised now. I'll go to Kiran Babu.
No,
Hi, sir. This is Kiran Babu. Good evening.
Yeah.
So this is Arun.
Actually, I have lately joined this one due to some issues. So anyway, I have two questions, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, I am from civil engineering background. I am construction manager for the Dharamsala Smart City. Okay. Actually, as Dharamsala is in hilly area, generally we have the parking issues.
Okay.
Especially at the ISBT, if you see there, we have a limited parking, and actually the we have as a solution now we are making some multi-level parking to accommodate the buses. Okay, for the for enhancing the public transportation system. Okay, and we have another one, bus depot also for workshop and repairs and all. Okay, so these projects as a solution actually we have. But my question is, how can we better integrate these things for better operability?
So, Mr. Kiran, you are from the Dharamshala Smart Cities?
Yes, sir.
So you're not one of the participants of the like the challenge.
Sir, actually,
right?
I am new only. I'm new, sir.
Right. Okay. So I think this question. So, Mr. Kiran, so what we do is that we'll take this question along with other things when we deal with the cities. So right now, this one, this session is focusing primarily on the startups who have applied for this problem statement. We will take this your question offline. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Arun, over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So related to the like the project requirements, it says like mobile -web -voice portal. So do we need to create all three?
So very quick answer for that. It also says that the broad scope of work, preferably, or there is a disclaimer on top. So we are not going to restrict you because you don't have all three, but we are open to ideas and how effective some systems work. So that will probably not be the only basis on which your solution is going to be measured or ranked, but in the overall.
I can add to that, Prashant. So which is why I started with the history of grievance redressal. That what we're seeing now is that even apps and portals have moved on, and right now you move to WhatsApp, right? So WhatsApp chatbots are the new frontier, and that's, if you look at it, the problem statement does not have it. But so I think we will consider innovation and we will consider user friendliness. So which is why the scope of work has been kept broad, that we want to look at all possible permutations. So that's what I would say.
So that is one. In fact, to add to what Subir is saying, that since the time we wrote this problem statement, now the whole world is talking about ChatGPT, completely replacing the entire grievance management system, as we say. So I think there is a whole lot of innovation that is possible. So don't be worried about the very specifics that are written, but yeah, user friendliness and the capabilities and functionality will matter. That's all. Okay. So I see next.
And
go ahead, Arun.
And for the startups in this challenge, the customer is the city, right?
I lost your voice, but I understand you're asking, is the customer the city? Yes.
Okay,
The transit agency,
so
the transit agency most likely.
So do we just provide our code and algorithm, everything at the end to the cities when they are like procuring? And is there anything else that the startups are responsible, like life cycle management after procurement?
So typically, most places. Surbhi, do you want to answer this?
No, Prashant, I'll follow up after you.
Yeah. So I would say most, and today is the era or the place where even the transit agencies are outsourcing their own bus operations to private players. So the question of owning and managing by themselves, I think, is very tricky. So especially with technology, now we are talking about everything as a service, technology as a service, mobility as a service. So I think we are in that plane. So it will be a solution that you maintain, manage, but operated by the city.
Yeah,
so
because like whenever I create like a web app or mobile app, I just host it on like a server. So cities procuring everything, so they just need to have their own server, right? So because if I am providing the server, then I will be like charging the cities once again.
Right. Agreed. So those will be very specific to the city, I guess. Some of the cities might want it different. Like some of the cities might have their own infrastructure on which they want it hosted. Some may not have it. So it depends upon the city. But otherwise, they are not going to take the responsibility of maintaining and managing your code per se.
And on one final question, so do we assume some things like GPS data is available and also like some fare collection servers are available to the startups? Because most of the cities don't even have like a GPS in their bus right now.
Yes. So in fact, as we are speaking with all of you startups, we are also having a simultaneous sessions with the cities, talking about and educating them about what all are the prerequisites for those problem statements. So right now we have got to a phase where all the cities have selected their problem statements, which they want to focus on. But now we are closely working with them to understand the dependencies that are there. And we'll get so we are going to be the bridge between both you as well as the city to come to that common ground. That's the role that all the partners in this program are going to facilitate. And there is also a task force that has been formed by the cities. So they will also work with various departments in the cities to kind of facilitate that process. But it's a long run. I will not have very specific answer right now, but I think that we are translating that understanding to them as we speak. Okay. Next, Karthikeyan.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is Karthik. I'm from Digit. I have two questions, and before to that, I just quickly introduce about Digit. We are one of the early partner of ONDC. We are the contributor to the ONDC as well. We are supporting to bring the ONDC adoption across the India. Apart from ONDC, we are also working with ULIP, Unified Logistics Interface Platform. And also we are working on distributor skill and education platform. And really, this is an honor for us to work with the Transport for All. And I have two questions. The first question is, since we are working on the other side as well, and then even the ULIP and then ONDC, they also have some kind of the reference. We are bringing the IGM issue and grievance management there as well. So can I take some kind of the reference there and then bring it here, or we need to strictly go with the requirement, functional requirement shared here? That's
Very quick answer for that. No, the functional requirements shared are very broad. We want to leave a lot of room for any innovation that you want to try. So you will not be ruled out for specific requirements, but more about the usability and functions. Let's go to the next.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, because our core strength is aggregation, sir. And then IGM is one of our another core areas, sir, so that we want to see whether we can bring the other things. Okay, sir. The second question, right? And I also understand that there is a requirement mentioned for the chat part and then UI, UX, all those things. I understand that these are the very important requirement. Considering the timeline, right? We may have only 4 months timeline. So if we can focus more, because the channels, we can add it anytime, like a chat or like a voice, we can add it.
Right.
However, the framework and solution, I think that's a more important thing. And then
Absolutely.
if you allow us to submit with the framework and the solution, later we can go for the chat part and then solutions. Is it okay to consider something like that? So instead of considering all the channels, we just go with the web channel, and then is it okay, sir?
So, the answer is not in a yes or a no, but I think that will be okay for you to go forward because, as you said, the whole system is more important than which channel you're adding. Those channels can be added later. But it also depends, you're also in a competing with various other people who are developing the solution. So, ultimately, there will be 1 or 2 startups from each problem statement, sometimes maybe even 3, but you are competing with others. So that's that's the only constraint. So if somebody else has all of what you are doing and then multiple channels, then quite obviously they would be ranked better. So
got it, sir. Got it, sir.
Am I audible, Prashant?
Yes, Subir.
Yeah, I just connected to what Arun also asked. So for the particular just restricting to the particular this phase of the challenge, we are looking at deployment and production ready applications. So that is the minimum that we're expecting. And the life cycle management or the deployment, that will be as part of the procurement process. So for this part of the challenge, we definitely would want deployment ready application. And as Karthik was asking, that since we've only specified that's what I was trying to say, that the chat bit has already caught too much attention. So we don't want to boundarize or set restrict that. That's why the scope has been broad. So whatever you think is in terms of user journey, the most critical aspects of this. So what we are also assuming, or rather on this call, inviting startups to think about is what would improve the user behavior, or to model and understand the user behavior also of public transport users. So we're assuming that experience and journey will be accounted for when the solution is built. And more specifically, the rules engine definitely is the minimum criteria when it comes to the grievance redressal. So I think that will be the basic minimum for any submission.
Okay, sir. Fine.
Yeah. Thank you very
and
much.
In future, if we need any clarification or anything, right, we can reach out to the email, sir, or is there any other point of contact is there, sir?
So for now, we'll use the email as a single point contact. And I think there is also some kind of WhatsApp groups that are created and to kind of, so you could share your questions to the administrators, but I would prefer the single point of contact would be the contact at transportforall.in, and we will take that forward. So, and as I said before, also, this question comes up almost every session, so I'll repeat it here again. Is if we think that there are questions which are relevant to everybody, then we'll always put out a document, or we could organize one more session like this, either specific to the problem statement or specific, or common to the whole challenge itself. So we have 4 full months, and by April 20th, if I remember the date right, you will have a process that will be shared with you. So there will be some intermediary goals as well, to check if you are making progress. And then comes the final stage when you will demonstrate a small pilot along with, and then the jury will evaluate results from the pilot. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, welcome. So there is one question from Rajendra Jindal, which is, can we get the current workflow of Grievance redressal system currently cities use? So once you're at a point where you have a workable basic flow of solution, you will see that cities will also start blowing up into this challenge very soon. So probably in about a month and a half, you will see the cities coming in. And then if some cities are able to even partner with some of the startups right in the beginning, then you will see what systems they use or what setups they have currently. So this you'll have to work together with the cities. But for the demo, you could probably use some kind of a flow, example flow, or a theoretical flow for your system to begin with, because you have to first impress the city that you have a solution that is working, right? And then comes the detailing of what the city's administrative systems and grievance redressal systems look like. Okay. I think with that, we are done with all the questions. Thank you very much. For all the speakers to take time, Andrew specifically. He's in the East Coast there in the US, starting up early, 7:30 in the morning. So that's also one of the reasons that we had this call at 6 p.m. India time instead of the regular sessions, which are all 3 to 5 p.m. Every day. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Sukhbir, for joining. And my best wishes to all the startups for this challenge. There is one more, we can take one more question. Because even we didn't give you a chance for a question, so go ahead.
Yes, sorry for the last minute. So we are working on a technology, the software framework, which would enable the, I think, the secure and seamless access for the mobile ticketing. What I wanted to know, there is when the solution that we are working on that do have a dependency on the phone side something and the what would be done on the deployment side, basically on the infrastructure side. I cannot right now openly. Is there a way to present what we are doing and to understand? Because we have some deployment, but for the solution to do, would be some dependency on the system integration side and on the phone side, where we may need to work with the Apple and the Googles of the world. So just wanted to check: is there a different forum where we can initially discuss with you, or how do we raise our questions?
So you could raise your questions on the email because I didn't really understand. So Andrew or Sukhbir, if you want to take that, because I don't know what the dependencies on the phone side would be, but as long as you put them in Play Store. Sukhbir, you want to? Andrew?
Just on the field staff side, so I briefly mentioned that there are technology standards for ICCCs that have been published. These are very extensive standards, so at least on the deployment on the city side, you can get some references from there. But with regards to the field level technologies, that's something that we by design of the challenge would not be able to offer insight on. We'll consider whatever you're submitting there, and I think at that stage of submission we will keep it neutral. Considering there is dependency, as Prashant was also mentioning, if there is something that's absolutely critical, you could write to us on the provided email ID, and we'll try to respond to the best extent possible.
Okay, I think I can do that. I can send an email with the problem we are solving and what is the dependency on the infrastructure end. And obviously, if from the phone side, there's obviously the phone maker has to give you some access for which they typically do it for specific cases, especially in the public transport scheme. They've done it for different countries. For our country, how I'd have to approach them in that way. So yeah, that I can send it separately.
Yeah, thank you. Arun, if it is absolutely critical, go ahead.
Yeah, just like a quick question to Sukhbir. So regarding the grievance redressal, can you give a suggestion like where to exactly start with? So who should be like our contact point, like any contact department? Because we can build like software product, but we need to like understand the process. So
I think, Prashant, what I'm recognizing is that there is some sort of reference that we need to come out with. So, Arun, what I request is give us some time and we will try to provide some reference documentation from the city side, or as many references that we can provide, so that there is some basic architecture that is available. We'll try to do that and we'll discuss that.
Arun, may I request that you put this question specifically, just this one, on email as well, on that contact@transportforall.in, so that we are not losing this thread. I understand your concern, where you're coming from, and let's see how quickly we can put an agency in touch so that you are working for that as a pilot rather than a complete theory. Yeah, okay, I got you.
Thanks a lot.
So with that,
I would just try to detail whatever requirements are there. So when we are trying to navigate that requirement, so as detailed as possible, if you could keep your query, we'll be able to help you better.
Yeah. Okay. So very good evening to everybody from India, and have a nice day, Andrew. Thank you very much, all of you, and best of luck. We will connect back soon. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.